We are here at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation headquarters in Bern. And here with me is Mr. Markus Reisle, head of the Global Program for Migration and Development. We are going to have an interview with Mr. Reisle to talk more about this program. So what is this program?
The Global Program on Migration and Development is a specific unit dealing with migration in a comprehensive way, meaning that we cover issues that are relevant for migrants, for host communities in countries of destination, in countries of transit, and in countries of origin.
As we saw, this program consists on 5 pillars. Would you explain more for public opinion in what consists in these 5 pillars? What is included?
The Global Program Migration and Development, as a global program, has basically 3 tasks: influence policy, create and support innovative projects, pilot projects, and share knowledge, manage knowledge. Based on these 3 tasks, we have 5 components of the program. 2 are linked with the dialogue. One is our position and our work within the UN system about the global migration dialogue. For example, within the UN, the current Global Compact on Safe and Regular Migration is an example where we are involved. The second dialogue is within Switzerland. This is our cooperation with the State Secretary of Migration, with the other departments and within SDC or in other units. And then we have 3 operational programs or components. One is mainstreaming, and this is basically to support governments in creating coherent migration policies. Maybe we will discuss a little bit later what is coherent migration policies. But and the second one is labor migration, supporting countries who live from labor migrants who export labor forces, for example, South Asian countries to the Gulf countries. Here the questions are around decent work conditions, but also information about the risks and the challenges that are linked with immigration. And the last component is diaspora. That's basically what contributions migrants can do for the development in the country of destination and in the country of origin.
Yes, then can we talk more about this labor migration policy? Can you explain it more in
so the coherent migration policy is basically a policy that responds to the different challenges that are faced with, that are linked with migration. For example, if you are a host community and foreigners come here to work or they come as refugees, the question of integration is a question that is important to solve and to tackle. Then you need to solve the question or to tackle the question. You are either a country that have young workforces, so the question is how to occupy them. Do you have work inside the country, or do you export this work?
How to integrate them in the labor market.
Exactly, and if your labor market is in need of labor forces, then you attract labor migrants in your country. If you export them, like for example the Philippines or Sri Lanka or other South Asian countries, then you make sure that these people have decent work conditions outside and to care about protecting them when they are abroad. And another question is the whole question of protection. So we're talking about refugees, about minorities, about excluded persons and groups. So how does a country deal with these populations and giving them the right, the access to basic services and so on? And we are convinced that and this is a rather new phenomenon, that all the countries try to have an outreach to their diaspora. Many countries have a large community. They studied abroad or they stayed there with their relatives and so on. And so far, the governments did not really care about how can we involve them for the development of their country. So this is more about framework conditions. This is more about how can diaspora units within the government be supported in having the right attitude towards these communities. For example, to avoid that these people pay double taxes for what they earn, once in the country where they of residence, when they send money back home. Once again, this is taxed. Yeah, this is not correct. Problem, yes. This is a big problem. Another question is security for investment. Many diaspora want to invest back home, but they are not secure whether their investment is really secure. So whether they invest and they lose everything after 2 years, that's not interesting. And maybe a third component is...
What I would like to stay here a little, because it's a very important subject also. And what is your role here, for example? What do you do in this regard to support these people that want to invest in their countries? Yeah. Because this is also a big problem. Yeah. Also people from different communities, they say, yes, we would like to contribute in our countries, but we don't feel safe. So what exactly is your role here? How you support or encourage them? Or
yeah, it's not so much with the diaspora that we can work with on these issues, because they are ready to invest. They may be in need of some advice. What are topics? What are areas that they could invest? But basically, our work consists in creating the necessary framework conditions in the country of origin. Yes. And because that's where there is a need first to understand these issues, and then accordingly to also change the laws, change the whole setup of. It's a long process, but also quite poor countries. I know that, for example, Guinea has created one measure, a one-stop shop for diaspora members, so that they do not need to run from one ministry to the other until they have settled the whole bureaucracy. So they can go to one shop and settle everything. Yes, so these are measures that can be taken quite rapidly. Changing laws and regulations is probably a long-term project.
It's a long, and it involves many actors. And
the third aspect that I would mention is also citizenship. Many countries, they do not allow foreigners to own land. So when, for example, refugees gave up their citizenship at home, because they fled home, and they took over the new citizenship, and they are regarded as foreigners. Sri Lanka, for example, doesn't allow foreigners to own land.
Yeah, it's in constitutions of
So if diaspora members find themselves excluded from that, why should they invest in their home country? So these are all questions that are linked with this domain about the involvement of migration, of diaspora. But what is also very important is, and this has also been acknowledged in the Agenda 2030, that already now migrants make huge contributions to sustainable development and inclusive growth. It has been mentioned, and it's written in the Agenda 2030, and actually we're very proud that this is one of a product of the global program, together with others, of course, but we try to push in that direction, and we succeeded to have it in the agenda.
Yes, good. When we are here at the projects and the success of projects, would you mention, for the opinion, some of the most successful projects that had and the impact that they had to the other people's life whenever they were implemented?
Yeah. Well, the project that the impact that I just mentioned is probably not yet an impact because it's just a sentence in a very important agenda. So we now have to make sure that such sentences trickle down and come to the regional and the national level and are well understood so that people are aware, for example, to acknowledge foreigners as actors for development. This is also important for the public opinion, for the perception of migrants. They are not just people that cost or create trouble or whatever.
Yes,
so this is very important as an impact. We hope that we can contribute to this. In the area of labor migration, we have, for example, the Safe Migration Program in Sri Lanka, where we support local civil society organizations and local authorities in advising and accompanying potential labor migrants before they leave. Because we are convinced that to inform people before they leave is the thing to do. This so-called pre-departure information.
It's like preparing them for what expects them.
Yeah. So they are not, many migrants, they just take this risk to emigrate or to migrate, not knowing exactly what they will wait for them. And also linked with all the risks and so on. I wouldn't say we through this information we try to avoid migration, but we want to make it more secure, more safe, so that people do not end up either trapped by traffickers and human smugglers or exploitation, or like too many people at the ground of the Mediterranean. So this is another project in the field of labor migration. We have a project in Tunisia and Switzerland, dealing with the Tunisian diaspora in Switzerland, where they try to establish projects, job creation projects in Tunisia, together with local partners in the region where they initially come from. It just started, so it's yet a little bit too early to talk about impacts, but nevertheless, if these small projects succeed, then we have additional jobs that are available for the local, especially for the youth, and this is a very important aspect.
Yes.
Probably also one project when we deal with this whole knowledge sharing and knowledge management. Here we, from time to time, we organize specific thematic conferences. The last one was this May in Amman, in Jordan, about the issue of mixed migration flows in that region, where we have the situation that you have labor migrants, you have refugees, and they all kind of reside in the same
backgrounds and
different backgrounds, and it's quite difficult to really set up good policies to tackle their needs. They all are needing basic services. Some have access, others not. So these are questions that we discussed with the community.
This is also because they need also more information, as you stated before.
Yeah. And also governments need also, or there is a need for a dialogue between civil societies, academia and governments and host communities and migrants to discuss about these issues, to find solutions for these topics. It's easier said than done.
Yes.
But this is the main challenge that we face nowadays, because many of the people that come to Europe, they claim asylum, but basically they are in search for work.
Yeah.
And as they have no other possibilities to come to Europe, they use the asylum system, which is basically the wrong system to come to Europe. But here we still have a lot of work to do, also together with other European countries, so that we can find solutions. so that the whole management of the migration to Europe is not in the hands of traffickers.
Yeah, this is the most important thing.
Yeah, because this is it's we have to say it's a shame for Europe that we have so much suffering and so much exploitation because we do not manage to have solidarity between among European countries, and we still lack an understanding of, as I said in the beginning, the globalized economy needs mobile workforces.
Yes.
So we are in need of these workforces, and so far they come on an irregular basis, and they end up in an exploitation situation, which is not correct.
Yes, and maybe that's why it's this need to collaborate with governments, and then to settle a program, and then for the need for workforce, and then you cooperate with them, and it's a more safe way than individuals just coming here and looking for asylum. Or
we need kind of safe migration patterns for migrants who will find work in Europe or in other regions.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking a lot about migrants in Europe, but basically the majority of refugees are not in Europe. They are in Africa, or in most of them are in developing countries.
Yeah, but they almost all face the same difficulties. So yes. And when we talked about creating the image or information or collaboration or inclusion of different actors, I wanted to ask you, what is the cooperation with media, for example, because media plays a big role in society. And they can influence the public opinion. And do you think that they should be more cooperative in the regard of reporting more about the successful jobs or the things that you are doing, and reporting more, focusing more on the good impact that or the good changes that your projects make in their lives, rather than in criticizing them?
Yeah, the role
and
of media,
informing more the people about the project, or
the role of media is crucial, and it's a fact that media are basically interested in things that in action, in kind of scandals of things that do not work, where you can blame someone. That's basically a little bit the pity and the situation with media. But nevertheless, I think media have an important role to play, and they could also create strong messages with regard to migration and to the situation of migrants, to the situation of refugees, to create also a kind of a goodwill that is necessary so that migrants' contribution can be effectively have its power and its energy in a country of origin, of destination. For example, we kind of are about to elaborate key messages that could be spread, because one thing is migration is a complex issue, and it's not easy to communicate a complexity. So it's easier to make it simple and to throw everyone in the same basket. So what we came up with some key messages is that it is a kind of a human right to have protection if you're in need of protection. So all the people that flee from conflicts, but also from environmental catastrophes, they have a right to be protected.
Basic right.
Yeah, this is a basic right, and this has to be upheld. But and on the other hand, the second message would also be, as I said before, the globalized economy needs flexible and mobile workforces. This we have to acknowledge, and we have to also state this, because it means that we need migrants. The question is, what quality and what specific knowledge and competences these migrants have, so that there's a match between what we need and with the competences that they have. And the third message is that everyone is talking about the root causes of migration, the root causes of forced migration, and here a clear statement is there is no quick fix. So we need to tackle these forced displacement issues with a long-term perspective. This goes along with changing also the relationship between the rich countries and the poor countries. This has to do with trade agreements, more balance, more equity, more justice also within the global community. But this is a long-term project. So when politicians claim we need to do something, we need to fix it now, this is an illusion. You cannot fix these things rapidly. And the fourth message is to do proper and coherent migration, we need good governance structures. And the current debate within the UN system about the Global Compact on Safe and Regular Migration and the Global Compact on Refugees is an excellent measure to improve the overall governance worldwide in this topic. Still a challenge. We will see what will be negotiated between the different countries next year. We will see then how the different countries take up these recommendations and so on. And I mean, if I look back the last 15 years where I followed a little bit the development in the global debate, then I must say we made huge progress. And this is an optimistic message that we will continue to improve the system.
Yeah, and in this regard also, what about Swiss civil society willing to take part in your projects? Mm-hmm.
It's always a challenge to bring kind of national perspectives and interest to a global level. You need to abstract a little bit from your own background and from your own interests. But I think we created or we made that platform on Swiss civil society possible. It's a very interesting exercise, and I would say it's also one of the successes that we managed to have traditional civil society organizations dealing with development. We have academia and we have diaspora organizations putting their forces together and reflect to what extent they can help also Switzerland, the government of Switzerland, to have, like I said, a more coherent migration policy as a country. It's a question about government's will, yes, but it's also a question about the other actors that are supporting such endeavors.
Yeah. Yes, and these were more or less the very important topics and the most interesting topics, and if you have something more to add in this regard.
No, I think what I can say also as a message is we need the constructive forces in this topic, and we need to also have actors who make the link between the reality of migrants, but also the reality of host communities, and bring these realities to the upper level on the dialogue, so that the dialogue is not about false images, prejudices, and so on, yes, but it's about real life and real concerns about also the challenges that migration is faced with.
Mr. Reisle, thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks for the interest and all the best for.
Thank you, the same.